He was deaf, and shouted as if everyone else were, too. The incitement to violence depends upon total transvaluation of the ordinary values. By a single stroke, the most criminal acts must be converted to heroic and meritorious deeds. If the revolution comes to grief, it will be because you and those you lead have become alarmed at your own brutality." Hrothulf fell down. The old man went on swinging along the path, oblivious, waving his fists. Hrothulf looked around him in slight surprise, understood that he had fallen, and got up. He almost fell again as he ran to catch his adviser. "Make no mistake, my beloved prince," the old man was yelling. "The total ruin of institutions and morals is an act of creation, a religious act. Murder and mayhem are the life and soul of revolution. I imagine you won't laugh when I tell you that. There are plenty of fools who would." "Oh, no, sir," said Hrothulf. "The very soul. What does a kingdom pretend to do? Save the values of the community, regulate compromise, improve the quality of the commonwealth. In other words, protect the power of the people in power and keep the others down. By common agreement, of course, so the fiction goes. And they do pretty well. We'll give them that." Hrothulf nodded. "We have to give them that." "Rewards to people who fit the system best, you know. King's immediate thanes, the thane's top servants, and so on till you come to the people who don't fit at all. No problem. Drive them to the darkest corners of the kingdom, starve them, throw them in jail, or put them out to war. That's how it works. But satisfy the greed of the majority, and the rest will do you no harm. That's it. You've still got your fiction of consent. If the lowest of the workers start grumbling, claim that the power of the state stands above society, regulating it, moderating it, keeping it within the bounds of order, an impersonal and higher authority of justice. And what if the workers are beyond your reconciliation? Cry law, cry common good, and put on the pressure. Arrest and execute a few." "A stinking fraud," Hrothulf said, and bit his lip. There were tears in his eyes. The old serf laughed. "Exactly, my boy. What is the state in a time of domestic or foreign crisis? What is the state when the chips are down? The answer is obvious and clear. Oh, yes. If a few men quit work, the police move in. If the borders are threatened, the army rolls out. Public force is the life and soul of every state, not merely army and police, but prisons, judges, tax collectors, every conceivable trick of coercive repression. The state is an organization of violence, a monopoly in what it is pleased to call legitimate violence. Revolution, my dear prince, is not the substitution of immoral for moral, or of illegitimate for legitimate violence. It is simply the pitting of power against power, where the issue is freedom for the winners and enslavement of the rest. Hrothulf stopped. "That's not at all what I intend," he said. "There can be more freedom or less freedom in different states." The old man stopped, too, several steps ahead of him on the forest path, and looked back, polite by an effort. "Well, that may be," he said. He shrugged. Hrothulf, though clumsy, was no fool. He said angrily, unaware of the irony that he, a prince, had a right to anger, and the old man, a peasant, did not. Nobody in his right mind would praise violence for its own sake, regardless of its ends. The old man shrugged and put on a childish smile. "But I'm a simple man, you see," he said, "and that's exactly what I do. All systems are evil. All governments are evil. Not just a trifle evil, monstrously evil." Though he still smiled, he was shaking, only half controlling it. "If you want me to help you destroy a government, I'm here to serve. But as for universal justice—" He laughed. Hrothulf puckered his lips, stared thoughtfully past him. Hrothgar's nephew was kind, for all that, to the cousins he half intended to displace. He was a moody, lonely young man, after all, afraid of strangers, awkward even with the adults he knew well, and the cousins were plump, blond children of 3 and 4. There was one other cousin, Freawaru, Hrothgar's daughter by a woman who had died. Whenever Freawaru spoke to him, Hrothulf blushed. He sat between the 2 boys at the table and helped them with their food, smiling when they talked, but rarely answering. The Queen would glance at the 3 now and then. So would others, sometimes. They all knew what was coming, though nobody believed it. Who can look into the wet-mouthed smiles of children and see a mead hall burning, or listen past their musical prattle to the midnight roar of fire? Except, of course, old Hrothgar. Violence and shame have lined the old man's face with mysterious calm. I can hardly look at him without a welling of confused, unpleasant emotion. He sits tall and still in his carved chair, stiff arms resting on the chair sides, his clear eyes trained on the mead hall door, where I'll arrive, if I come. When someone speaks to him, he answers politely and gently, his mind far away, on murdered thanes, abandoned hopes. He's a giant. He had in his youth the strength of 7 men, not now. He has nothing left but the power of his mind, and no pleasure there. A case of knives. The civilization he meant to build has transmogrified to a forest thick with traps. Hrothulf, he knows, is a danger to his sons. But he cannot abandon the child of his dead younger brother. Higmod, his brother-in-law, is biding his time while Hrothgar lives because of Wealhtheow. But Higmod, he knows, is no friend. And then there is a man named Ingeld, ruler of the Heathobards, as famous for slaughter as was Hrothgar in his day. The old man intends to deal out Freawaru to him. He has no assurance it will work. And then, too, there's his treasure hoard. Another trap. A man plunders to build up wealth to pay his men and bring peace to the kingdom, but the hoard he builds for his safety becomes the lure of every marauder that happens to hear of it. Hrothgar, keen of mind, is out of schemes. No fault of his. There are no schemes left. And so he waits like a man chained in a cave, staring at the entrance, or sometimes gazing with sad, absent-minded eyes at Wealhtheow, chained beside him. Who is one more trap, the worst. She's young, could have served a more vigorous man, and beautiful. Need not have withered her nights and wasted her body on a bony, shivering wretch. She knows all this, which increases his pain and guilt. She understands the fear for his people that makes a coward of him, so that night when I attacked her, he would not lift a finger to preserve her. And his fear is one he cannot even be sure is generous, perhaps mere desire that his name and fame live on. She understands, too, his bitterness at growing old. She even understands, more terrible, no doubt, than all the rest, old Hrothgar's knowledge that peace must be searched through ordeal upon ordeal, with no final prospect but failure. Lesson on lesson they've suffered through, recognizing more profoundly each time their indignity, shame, triviality. It will continue. How, if I know all this, you may ask, could I hound him, shatter him again and again, drive him deeper and deeper into woe? I have no answer, except perhaps this. Why should I not? Has he made any move to deserve my kindness? If I give him a truce, will the king invite me in for a kiss on the forehead, a cup of mead? Ha! This nobility of his, this dignity, are they not my work? What was he before? Nothing. A swollen-headed raider, full of boasts and stupid jokes and mead, no more noble than Red Horse, Hrothulf's friend. No one would have balked at my persecuting him then. I made him what he is. Have I not a right to test my own creation? Enough. Who says I have to defend myself? I'm a machine like you, like all of you. Bloodlust and rage are my character. Why does the lion not wisely settle down and be a horse? In any case, I too am learning, ordeal by ordeal, my indignity. It's all I have, my only weapon for smashing through these stiff coffin walls of the world. So I dance in the moonlight, make foul jokes, or labor to shake the foundations of night with my heaped-up howls of rage. Something is bound to come of all this. I cannot believe such monstrous energy of grief can lead to nothing. I have thought up a horrible dream to impute to Hrothgar. Hrothgar speaks. I have dreamt it again, standing suddenly still in a thicket among wet trees, stunned, minutely shuddering, hearing a wooden echo escape. A mossy floor, almost colourless, disappears in depths of rain among the tree shapes. I am straining, tasting that echo a second longer. If I can hold it, familiar if I can hold it, a black tree with a double trunk, two trees grown into one, throws up its blurred branches. The two trunks in their infinitesimal dance of growth have turned completely about one another, their join a slowly twisted scar that I recognize. A quick arc flashes sidewise in the air, a heavy blade in flight, a wooden stroke, iron sinks in the gasping core. I will dream it again. Chapter 9. December, approaching the year's darkest night, and the only way out of the dream is down and through it. The trees are dead. The days are an arrow in a dead man's chest. Snow light blinds me, heatless fire, pale, apocalyptic. The creeks are frozen. The deer show their ribs. I find dead wolves, a paw, a scraggly tail sticking up through snow. The trees are dead, and only the deepest religion can break through time and believe they'll revive. Against the snow, black cuts on a white, white hand. In the town, children go down on their backs in the drifted snow and move their arms, and, when they rise, leave behind them impressions, mysterious and ominous, of winged creatures. I come upon them as I move through sleeping streets to the mead hall, and though I know what they are, I pause and study them, picking at my lip. I do not pretend to understand these feelings. I record them, check them off one by one for the dead ears of night. Something is coming, strange as spring. I am afraid. Standing on an open hill, I imagine muffled footsteps overhead. I watch one of Hrothgar's bowmen pursue a hart. The man, furred from his toes to his ears, walks through the moon and snow-lit woods, silent as an owl, huge bow on his shoulder, his eyes on the dark tracks. He moves up a thickly wooded hill, and at the crest of it, standing as if waiting for him, he finds the hart. The antlers reach out motionless, as still as the tree limbs overhead or the stars above the trees. They're like wings, filled with otherworldly light. Neither the hart nor the hunter moves. Time is inside them, transferred from chamber to chamber like sand in an hourglass. It can no more get outside than sand in the lower chamber can rise to the upper without a hand to turn stiff nature on its head. They face each other, unmoving as numbers on a stick. And then, incredibly, through the pale, strange light, the man's hand moves, click, 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 toward the bow, and grasps it, and draws it down, away from the shoulder and around in front, click, click, and transfers the bow to the slowly moving second hand, and the first hand goes back up and, click, over the shoulder, and returns with an arrow, threads the bow. Suddenly, time is a rush for the hart. His head flicks, he jerks, his front legs buckling, and he's dead. He lies as still as the snow hurtling outward around him to the hushed world's rim. The image clings to my mind like a growth. I sense some riddle in it. Near Hrothgar's hall stand the images of the Scyldings' gods, grotesque faces carved out of wood or hacked from stone and set up in a circle, eyes staring inward, gazing thoughtfully at nothing. The priests approach them, carrying torches, their shaggy white heads bent, obsequious. "Great Spirit," the chief of the priests wails, "ghostly destroyer, defend the people of Scyld and kill their enemy, the terrible world-rim walker." I smile, arms folded on my chest, and wait. But nobody comes to kill me. They sing, an antique language as ragged and strange as their beards, a language closer to mine than to their own. They march in a circle from god to god, maybe uncertain which one is the great destroyer. "Is it you?" their meek old faces ask, lifting the torch to each monster shape in turn. "Not I," whispers the head with 4 eyes. "Not I," whispers sly old Daggertooth. "Not I," says the wolf god, the bull god, the horse god, the happily smiling god with the nose like a pig's. They stab a calf and burn it, the corpse still jerking. The old peasant, friend of Prince Hrothulf, whispers crossly, "In the old days they used to kill virgins. Religion is sick." Which is true. There is no conviction in the old priest's songs. There is only showmanship. No one in the kingdom is convinced that the gods have life in them. The weak observe the rituals, take their hats off, put them on again, raise their arms, lower their arms, moan, intone, press their palms together. But no one harbors unreasonable expectations. The strong, old Hrothgar, Unferth, ignore the images. The will to power resides among the stalactites of the heart. Herkopf. Once, years ago, for no particular reason, I wrecked the place, broke up the wooden gods like kindling, and toppled the gods of stone. When they came out in the morning and saw what I'd done, no one was especially bothered except the priests. They lamented and tore their hair, the priests, as fraught and rhetorical as they were when they prayed. And after a few days their outcries made people uneasy. On the chance that there might be something to it all, whatever a reasonable man might think, the people tipped the stone gods up again with levers and ropes, and began to carve new gods of wood to replace those I'd ruined. It was dull work, you could see by their faces, but it was for some reason necessary. When the ring was complete, I considered wrecking it again, but the gods were inoffensive, dull. I decided, the hell with it. I have eaten several priests. They sit on the stomach like duck eggs. Midnight. I sit in the center of the ring of gods, musing on them, pursuing some thought that I cannot make come clear. They wait, as quiet as upright bones in the softly falling snow. So Hrothgar waits, lying on his back with his eyes open. Wealhtheow lies on her back beside him, her eyes open, her hand resting lightly in his. Hrothulf's breathing changes. He is having bad dreams. Unferth sleeps fitfully, guarding the mead-hall. And the shaper in his big house tosses and turns. He has a fever. He mumbles a few inchoate phrases to someone who is not there. All the gods have hats of snow and snow-crested noses. In the town below me there are no lights left. Overhead, the stars are blanked out by clouds. But someone is awake. I hear him coming toward me in the snow, vaguely alarming, approaching like an arrow in a slowed-down universe, and a shudder runs through me. Then I see him, and I laugh at my fear. An old priest, palsied, walking with a cane of ash. He thinks it has magic in it. "Who's there?" he pipes, coming to the edge of the ring. He has a black robe, and his beard, as white as the snow all around us, hangs almost to his knees. "Who's there?" he says again, and pokes himself through between two gods, feeling ahead of himself with the cane. "Is there somebody here?" he whimpers. "It is I," I say, "the destroyer." A violent shock goes through him. He shakes all over, practically falls down. "My lord," he whimpers. He goes down on his knees. "Oh, blessed, blessed Lord!" A look of doubt crosses his face, but he resists it. "I heard someone down here," he says. "I thought it was—" The doubt comes again, mixed with fear this time. He squints, cocks his head, struggling to penetrate his blindness by force of will. "I am Orc," he says uncertainly, "eldest and wisest of the priests." I smile, say nothing. I intend to paint the images with the old man's steaming blood. "I know all mysteries," the priest says. "I am the only man still living who has thought them all out." "We are pleased with you, Orc," I say, voice very solemn. Then, suddenly impish, at times I cannot resist these things, "Tell us what you know of the king of the gods." "The king?" he says. "The king!" I do not giggle. He rolls his blind eyes, figuring the odds, snatching through his mind for doctrines. "Speak to us concerning his unspeakable beauty and danger," I say. And wait. The snow falls softly on the images. The old priest, kneeling, has one knee on his beard and is unable to lift his head. He shakes all over, as if the palsy is something outside him, an element like wind. "The king of gods," he whispers, and searches his wits. At last he folds his arthritic white hands, raises them before him like a nightmare flower, and speaks. "The king of the gods is the ultimate limitation," he keens, "and his existence is the ultimate irrationality." A tick goes down one cheek, jerks the corner of his mouth. "For no reason can be given for just that limitation which it stands in his nature to impose. The king of the gods is not concrete, but he is the ground for concrete actuality. No reason can be given for the nature of God, because that nature is the ground of rationality." He tips his head, waiting for some response from me that will tell him how he's doing. I say nothing. The old man clears his throat, and his face takes on an expression still more holy. The tick comes again. "The king of the gods is the actual entity in virtue of which the entire multiplicity of eternal objects obtains its graded relevance to each stage of concrescence. Apart from him, there can be no relevant novelty." I notice with surprise that the priest's blind eyes are brimming with tears. They seep down his cheeks into his beard. I raise my fingers to my mouth, baffled. "The chief god's purpose in the creative advance is the evocation of novel intensities. He is the lure for our feeling." Orc is now weeping profusely, so moved that his throat constricts. I observe and wonder. His knotted hands shake and sway. He is the eternal urge of desire, establishing the purposes of all creatures. He is an infinite patience, a tender care that nothing in the universe be vain. He begins to moan, shaking violently, and it occurs to me that perhaps he is merely cold. But instead of hugging himself, as I expect him to, he stretches out his arms toward the sky. Huge knuckled fingers gnarled and twisted as if to frighten me. Oh, the ultimate evil in the temporal world is deeper than any specific evil, such as hatred or suffering or death. The ultimate evil is that time is perpetual perishing, and being actual involves elimination. The nature of evil may be epitomized, therefore, in two simple but horrible and holy propositions. Things fade, and alternatives exclude. Such is his mystery, that beauty requires contrast, and that discord is fundamental to the creation of new intensities of feeling. Ultimate wisdom, I have come to perceive, lies in the perception that the solemnity and grandeur of the universe rise through the slow process of unification in which the diversities of existence are utilized, and nothing is lost. The old man falls forward, arms thrown out in front of him, and weeps with gratitude. I have trouble deciding what to do. Before I can make up my mind about him, I become aware that there are others moving toward the place, drawn by the old man's keening. So quietly that even old Orc cannot hear me, I tiptoe out of the ring and hide behind a fat stone image of a god with a skull in his lap and a blacksmith's apron. 3 of his fellow priests arrive. They gather around him, bend over to look at him. The snow falls on them softly. First Priest. Orc, what are you doing here? It is written that the old shall keep to the comfort of their beds. Second Priest. It's a bad habit, beloved friend, this wandering about at night when monsters prowl. Third Priest. Senility. I've been telling you the old fool's gone senile. Orc. Brothers, I've talked with the great destroyer. Third Priest. Bosh! First Priest. Blasphemy! It is written, ye shall not see my face. Second Priest. Think what shape you'll be in for your morning devotions. Orc. He stood as near to me as you are. First Priest. Worship is the work of priests. What the gods do is the business of the gods. You know the text. Third Priest. He's a blamed fool. If a man hankers for visions, he should do it in public, where it does us some good. Second Priest. It doesn't look right, beloved friend, wandering around in the middle of the night. A man should try to be more regular. Orc. Nevertheless, I saw him. My life of study and devotion has been rewarded. I told him my opinion of the king of the gods, and he didn't deny it. I believe I'm approximately right. First Priest. The theory is ridiculous. Idle speculation, for it is written... Second Priest. Please do come in with us, beloved friend. I hate being up after midnight. It ruins me the whole next day. It makes me put my clothes on wrong, and scramble the service, and eat incorrectly. Third Priest. Lunatic priests are bad business. They give people the willies. One man like him can turn us all to paupers. As I listen, shaking my head at the strangeness of the priestly conversation, another priest comes running up, younger than the others, pulling his outer robe on as he comes. They turn their heads, looking at the younger priest in annoyance. It occurs to me that perhaps he has been drinking. "What's this?" he cries. "Precious gods, what's this?" He throws his hands out, delighted by all he sees. Orc tells him what he has seen, and he listens in rapture. Before Orc has finished, the younger priest drops to his knees and throws his hands up, shaggy lips smiling, wild. Fourth Priest. Blessed, oh, blessed! On his knees he goes over to Orc, seizes the old man's head between his hands, and kisses him. I feared for you, dear blessed Orc. I feared your bloodless rationalism. But now I see the will of the gods. The rhythm is re-established. Merely rational thought Forgive me for preaching, but I must. Merely rational thought leaves the mind incurably crippled in a closed and ossified system. It can only extrapolate from the past. But now, at last, sweet fantasy has found root in your blessed soul. The absurd, the inspiring, the uncanny, the awesome, the terrifying, the ecstatic, none of these had a place for you before, but I should have seen it coming. Oh, I kick myself for not seeing it coming. A vision of the destroyer. Of course. Before we know it, you'll be kissing girls. Can't you grasp it, brothers? Both blood and sperm are explosive, irregular, feeling-pitched, messy, and inexplicably fascinating. They transcend. They leap the gap. Oh, blessed Orc, I believe your vision proves there is hope for us all. So he raves, overflowing with mead-bowl joy, and the older three priests look down at him as they would at a wounded snake. Orc ignores him, sniffling privately. I back away. Even a monster's bloodlust can be stifled by such talk. They remain inside the image ring, snow falling softly on their hair and beards, and except for their forms, their prattle, the town is dead. Hrothgar is asleep now, resting up for tomorrow's ordeal of waiting. Wealhtheow breathes evenly beside him. Hrothulf and the king's 2 children are asleep. In the main hall, row on row in their wall-hung beds, the guardians snore, except Unferth. Puffy-eyed, he gets up, and in a kind of stupor goes to the mead hall door to piss. A dog barks. Not at me. I have put my spell on them. Unferth hardly hears. He looks out over the snowy rooftops of the town to the snowy moor, the snowy woods, unaware of my presence behind the wall. The snow falls softly through the trees, closing up the foxes' dens, burying the tracks of sleeping deer. A wolf, asleep with his head on his paws, awakens at the sound of my footsteps, and opens his eyes but does not lift his head. He watches me pass, his grey eyes hostile, then sleeps again, his cave half hidden by snow. I do not usually raid in the winter, when the world is a corpse. I would be wiser to be curled up, asleep like a bear in my cave. My heart moves slowly, like freezing water, and I cannot clearly recall the smell of blood. And yet I am restless. I would fall, if I could, through time and space to the dragon. I cannot. I walk slowly, wiping the snow from my face with the back of my arm. There is no sound on earth but the whispering snowfall. I recall something. A void, boundless as a nether sky. I hang by the twisted roots of an oak, looking down into immensity. Vastly far away I see the sun, black but shining, and slowly revolving around it there are spiders. I pause in my tracks, puzzled though not stirred by what I see. But then I am in the woods again, and the snow is falling, and everything alive is fast asleep. It is just some dream. I move on, uneasy, waiting. Chapter 10. Tedium is the worst pain. The dull victim staring, vague-eyed, at seasons that never were meant to be observed. The sun walks mindlessly overhead, the shadows lengthen and shorten as if by plan. The gods made this world for our joy, the young priest squeals. The people listen to him dutifully, heads bowed. It does not impress them, one way or the other, that he's crazy. The scent of the dragon is a staleness on the earth. The shaper is sick. I watch a great horned goat ascend the rocks toward my mere. I have half a mind to admire his bottomless stupidity. "Hey, goat!" I yell down. "There's nothing here. Go back!" He lifts his head, considers me, then lowers it again to keep an eye on crevasses and seams, icy scree, slick rocky ledges, doggedly continuing. I tip up a boulder and let it fall thundering toward him. His ears flap up in alarm, he stiffens, looks around him in haste, and jumps. The boulder bounds past him. He watches it fall, then turns his head, looks up at me disapprovingly. Then, lowering his head again, he continues. It is the business of goats to climb. He means to climb. "Ah, goat, goat," I say, as if deeply disappointed in him. "Use your reason. There's nothing here." He keeps on coming. I am suddenly annoyed, no longer amused by his stupidity. The mere belongs to me and the fire snakes. What if everybody should decide the place is public? "Go back down, goat!" I yell at him. He keeps on climbing, mindless, mechanical, because it is the business of goats to climb. "Not here!" I yell. "If climbing's your duty to the gods, go climb the mead hall." He keeps on climbing. I run back from the edge to a dead tree, throw myself against it and break it off, and drag it back to the cliff wall. "You've had fair warning," I yell at him. I'm enraged now. The words come echoing back to me. I lay the tree sideways, wait for the goat to be in better range, then shove. It drops with a crash and rolls crookedly toward him. He darts left, reverses himself, and bounds to the right, and a limb catches him. He bleats, falling, flopping over with a jerk too quick for the eye, and bleats again, scrambling, sliding toward the ledge side. The tree, slowly rolling, drops out of sight. His sharp front hooves dig in, and he jerks onto his feet, but before his balance is sure, my stone hits him and falls again. I leap down to make certain he goes over this time. He finds his feet the same instant that my second stone hits. It splits his skull, and blood sprays out past his dangling brains, yet he doesn't fall. He threatens me, blind. It's not easy to kill a mountain goat. He thinks with his spine. A death tremor shakes his flanks, but he picks toward me, jerking his great twisted horns at air.